Today we're talking about something that was highly requested. For some reason, not fully sure, but the Canon 11-24 f4 behemoth lens. Now this 11-24 lens is very, very pricey and is very intimidating to look at for a lot of people. So that way, not a lot of people can use it to get their hands on it, and people don't really know the option to rent stuff. And I kind of brought up this lens versus what's filming me right now, the 16-35 f4 lens, which has image stabilization, because one's $1,000 and this one's about $3,000. So that being said, I was able to have this out for a long while now, and I was able to use this out in the streets in New York, Philadelphia, and I want to thank B&H Photo for sending this out so I could review this. They're not sponsoring or paying this in any way. These are my thoughts. And I'll tell you what, I've got a lot of good thoughts and just some not necessarily flawed thoughts about this lens, but something that might deter me from necessarily buying it, and what I might classify this more of a specialty. Now that being said, this is one of Canon's sharpest lenses, especially on their zoom side. Obviously prime lenses are a little bit sharper, but like I mentioned, this is most likely a specialty lens for a lot of people, especially at the price point for around the $2,700 to $3,000 US dollar mark. And I highly see that. The build quality is pretty decent. It is a little plasticky. It is metallic on the back here on the lens mount, so that way you can mount it. But I felt like for $3,000, this should have some form of image stabilization, even though I don't always necessarily recommend it in a wide angle because it kind of doesn't matter. But with the weight of this lens, it does, and I felt it could have helped in a couple of situations. That and this being a 2.8 lens. This being an f4 lens, once again, f4 for me works pretty much 98 to almost 100% of the time. But for it costing as much as it is, and for having such a big element like a Tamron 15-30 2.8 does, the Nikon 14-24 2.8 as well, this should have been somewhere around that as well. And it's more pricey. It's great for street photography, landscapes, if you want to create a more specialized effect. This is also decent for, I'd say, more or less real estate photographers because of what you can do in tighter situations, and you can use this lens. Like I said, I brought this out and I had a great time shooting with this thing. I took it against the brick wall. You'll see some of those tested how it reacted to stuff like that. And you know what? And at 11mm f4, you do get slight vignetting. That's quite expected with something like this with the bulbous element. And once again, I don't know what you're looking for in regards to depth of field and how shallow it's going to be. This is an ultra wide lens for a reason, so don't expect much. But you do see a little bit, as I'll show you in my picture I took just holding up the Canon EOS M6. And 24mm, you're pretty much spot on, but this lens is very, very sharp all around. As you use these specialty type of lenses, especially going near fisheye, this is before a fisheye, there is no fisheye effect. You do have to watch your edges. You do have to watch the corners of your frame, because you do get that specialized distortion, which I'll show you when I switch out these lenses in a little bit, of what you get. So you've got to understand how to shoot with this, know where to put things, because if you have something here in the frame, it's not going to look terrible, but if you have it over here, you're going to see it bend and stuff. I use this with the Canon EOS 1DX Mark II and the Canon 6D Mark II, and I got great results with both of them. At 11mm, at some points where there was some kind of high range, there was a little bit of chromatic aberration, but you really, really have to pixel peep to see something like that. But I do want to add that this lens is very accurate and fast as well, especially with the USM, the ultrasonic motor in this. It's snap, it's fast, autofocus, it catches on exactly what you need. That being in a wide angle, once again, normally isn't needed, because a lot of people will be using this on a tripod, more or less, walking around with it. But if you need this, it's going to work, and it's going to be super reliable in that type of situation. And the other thing I like, and this, once again, this is a professional lens as well, is that when you go from 11 to 24, your f4 is pretty, consistent. And that's usually a perk with 2.8 f4 lenses, is that you won't see an exposure change. But some cheaper made lenses, even though I've seen some more expensive ones, do that. So it's just great to note that even though you might still be at f4, there really is no exposure difference. You're getting what you're paying for. So besides the no image stabilization, it being a little bit pricey, the focus ring is actually, it's pretty smooth. It's rather good. The zoom ring for me is a little tighter than what I wanted, especially, but it's pretty smooth for what it is. I just wish it was a little less. I mean, this did a very, very good job. I'm very impressed by this lens. And that's really about it. There's not much more I can say about this guy right here. The other thing a lot of people might ask is, well, how do you use filters? You can't use a traditional screw-on filter right here because it doesn't have that. You either have to use some form of square filter, something that you might be able to adapt and slide over the front of the lens. But an interesting thing a lot of people don't mention, and I opened this up on camera, I'm like, I have no idea what this is. There are these square, white square markers on the back of this right here. And if you actually look rather closely, I'm just noticing this more now, is you can actually slide a little bit of a gel filter behind it. So what Canon did is develop a kind of a built-in little gel filter thing that you could slide down. It'll actually hold inside of this thing. So you can get away with some stuff. I don't like a lot of the gel filters, especially on lenses, but you can do that. Maybe if you wanted to mod some things, you can even mod an actual good material for something like this. Weather sealed, it'll work out 100%. But if anything, I'd recommend actually getting the front filter systems that you could put for something like this. So going back to one of the original questions I was asked, would I keep the 16-35 f4 or 11-24 f4 if given the chance? And I've mentioned this even in the unboxing and first impressions review. This is right now one of my favorite lenses in at least the past couple years is this 16-35 f4. It's $1,000. It's an amazing lens that Canon makes. It does have image stabilization and it pretty much answers everything that I need and lives on my camera for most of the stuff. So be it even though the price is about $2,000 less, I would still take this over something like this. And that's because of the weight and heft of this. I didn't have a bad time shooting with this, but for what I do, I personally don't need what this can do. But I really enjoyed making some of the images that I made and captured and the buildings, cityscape, and some street stuff that I did with this. This just isn't for me. But like I said, if you have $2,700 to $3,000, you're into real estate, you're into something where you need a little bit something wider, because at 11 millimeters, you are buying this for a specific reason. Same thing like you're buying a prime lens at a 1.4 or 2.8, zoom or something like that. Personally, the sharpness is near the same. I think this nudges it out by a little bit compared to the 16-35. I would still take the 16-35, but this lens right here is absolutely great image quality wise. Build quality, it's pretty good. Glass is amazing, and this is made for a reason. But I want to know your thoughts. Would you be interested in something like this? Should this have image stabilization? Should this have been a 2.8 lens? I'd say if you can rent this thing to check it out, absolutely check it out. And if you can get your hands on the actual 16-35 f4, you should do that as well. Both great lenses, both can apply to a lot. This one's a little bit more versatile and one of my favorites right now. This has a lot that it can do, a little bit of weight to it, and it should have just had a couple more things. But if you need it, it's yours to use, and you're buying it for a reason, and it'll fulfill that need. This is the 11-24 lens right now. I just wanted to show you real quick. I will be referencing my monitor so that way I can see what's going on, but this is pretty much it right here. So this is dead center. Doesn't look too bad. This is 11 millimeters, but as you see when I go towards the sides, I look very distorted. Going around, I'm pretty much almost at the side of the lens, but as you see, I'm pretty elongated. And then like going towards the top, you'll see like it starts to bend, and this is the distortion you get with ultra wide lenses. But I mean, that's how it goes. My face is weird looking like normal, so that didn't change anything. But then obviously as you zoom in, so this will be at about 16 millimeters, gives you about the same, a little wide angle, and it takes a little bit longer to get distorted. Like with the 11, about here I was getting distorted, and I'm at the corners. But then if I go to 24, it's rather normal. This is tracking very well. It's not a loud lens, So this is me at 24 right now. So it just works out rather well. And once again, just so you can see the exposure, 11, 24. So this is typically frame. So this would be me straight up right here at 24. But then if you go to 11, look at everything else you add on and you see onto something like this. And you can really just go from there. So that's what you're getting with something like this. And just to show you the difference, I'll leave this at 16 millimeters. I'll throw on the 16-35, not move whatsoever. And that way you can see it a little bit of a difference. So once again, 24, 16, 11, and we'll switch over right now. And here's the 16 and 35 f4 at 16 millimeters. This will be at 24 millimeters. Is that about the same? You know, that's probably about the same. Once again, then you get the 35, and you just get something a little bit more different, and you get a little bit more range. So once again, 35, 16, you know, this, you know, was obviously wider at 11. 16 to 35 pretty much handles everything that I need, you know, in most regards. So that's why I kind of like this one a little bit more, but a lens like this does have its place for people.